Chicago winters have a way of getting into your bones. Like the cold isn't just outside, but sitting in your chest, making it hard to breathe. That morning was no different. The streets were glazed with ice, the air biting at my face as I opened the cracked window just enough to hear the city waking up. Coffee carts hissed with steam somewhere below, and car tires crunched over frozen slush. Inside my little one-bedroom apartment, the heater coughed weakly. I pulled on my jacket, thin, worn but the best I had, and glanced toward the small bed tucked into the corner. Noah was curled up under the covers, his blonde hair sticking to his forehead, his face pale except for the fever-pink flush in his cheeks. "Hey, buddy," I said softly, kneeling beside him. My fingers brushed over his hair. "How's my champ feeling?" His blue eyes blinked up at me, those same eyes Lily had. "My tummy hurts," he whispered. I'd been hearing that for 3 days now. Each time I'd convinced myself it was just something he ate, maybe a small stomach bug. But last night, his cries had woken me up twice, and I knew this morning was different. The truth is, I don't take Noah to the hospital unless I absolutely have to. Not because I don't care. God, I'd give anything for him. But because I can't afford it. I work 2 jobs, hauling freight at night and patching drywall during the day. The bills eat my paycheck before I even see it. But when you're a dad, there's a moment where fear outweighs your bank balance. And this morning, I'd hit that point. "All right," I murmured, helping him sit up. "We're going to the hospital." The cold slapped us the second we stepped outside. I tucked him close under my arm, his little body trembling against mine. The bus ride to Chicago Memorial Hospital felt longer than usual, each stop and start pressing against my patience. Noah leaned his head on my chest, his small breaths uneven. When we finally stepped inside the hospital's gleaming lobby, the heat hit us like a wall. Everything felt too big, too clean. Marble floors, polished chrome railings, a smell that was somehow both sterile and expensive. I carried Noah toward the reception desk, where a woman in crisp scrubs looked up. "Name?" she asked. "Carter. Ethan Carter. My son's sick. Stomach pain, fever for a few days." She nodded, typing something into her computer. "Please have a seat. A nurse will call you shortly." I sat down in the corner, cradling Noah on my lap. My eyes darted around the room. Families huddled together, doctors in white coats rushing past, the faint hum of the vending machine in the corner. Then it happened. Noah stirred, lifting his head. His eyes widened, his mouth falling open just a little. He pointed across the lobby. "Daddy?" His voice was soft, almost awed. "That's Mommy." For a second, my breath stopped. I followed his gaze. Across the polished floor, near the glass elevators, stood a woman in a tailored navy blue suit. She was tall, graceful, with long dark hair pulled back neatly, her heels clicking softly as she walked. She looked nothing like Lily, but Noah's eyes stayed fixed on her, his small hand still pointing. "That's Mommy," he said again, this time with a certainty that made my skin prickle. The woman turned slightly, speaking to someone in a lab coat. Her presence commanded the room. Even from here, I could tell she was important, someone people listened to. The receptionist leaned toward another nurse and whispered, "That's Ms. Charlotte Bennett, the CEO." CEO? My head spun. Why would my son think the CEO of Chicago Memorial was his mother? And why, when her eyes briefly met mine across the lobby, did I feel like she recognized me? For a few seconds, I just sat there frozen, Noah's words echoing in my head. "That's Mommy." I wanted to correct him, tell him it wasn't possible, but there was something in his voice, something so certain, so familiar, that I couldn't bring myself to say it. The woman, Ms. Charlotte Bennett, the CEO, was crossing the lobby now. She moved with quiet confidence, the kind you don't learn in a week or a year. People stepped aside for her without even realizing it. She was talking to a doctor, but her eyes, sharp, focused, kept flicking toward us. When her gaze met mine again, there was a flicker of something. Recognition? Confusion? I couldn't tell. "Daddy, she's coming," Noah whispered, his small hand gripping my jacket. I stood up quickly, shifting Noah in my arms. My first instinct was to put distance between us. I don't know why. Maybe because I wasn't used to people like her noticing people like me. Mr. Carter? A nurse called from across the room. I turned my head toward the nurse, ready to follow her, but then I heard a smooth, steady voice behind me. Excuse me, you said your name is Carter? I turned, and there she was. Up close, Charlotte Bennett was even more striking. Dark, intelligent eyes that missed nothing, a faint scent of something expensive and understated, like jasmine mixed with rain. Yes, I said cautiously. Ethan Carter. Her gaze dropped briefly to Noah, who was still watching her like he'd found something precious he thought he'd lost. She softened slightly. And what's your son's name? Noah, I replied. She smiled, just barely. Hello, Noah. My son didn't answer. Instead, he reached out one small hand toward her. Mommy, he said again. The words hung between us like a thunderclap in a silent room. Charlotte blinked, the smile fading. I think you're mistaken, sweetheart, she said gently, but her eyes stayed locked on him, searching, as if trying to solve a puzzle. I'm sorry, I said quickly, shifting Noah's weight in my arms. He lost his mom when he was a baby. He gets confused sometimes. But even as I said it, I could see it, the way Charlotte's expression tightened for half a second before smoothing over again. The nurse at the far end of the room called my name again, louder this time. I turned toward her. When I looked back, Charlotte was still there, watching. They took Noah into an examination room, and I sat beside him, answering questions about his symptoms. The doctor ordered some tests, explaining it might take an hour or two to get results. When the nurse left, I leaned back in the chair, rubbing my eyes. My head was buzzing, not just from worry about Noah, but from the strange encounter in the lobby. Why would the CEO of a major hospital take the time to speak to us? And why did it feel like she was just as unsettled by Noah's words as I was? I must have dozed off for a minute because the next thing I knew, the door creaked open. Charlotte stepped in. I hope I'm not intruding, she said, her voice calm but careful. I sat up straight. No, ma'am. Is there something you need? She hesitated, just long enough to make me wonder what she was about to say, then pulled a chair closer to Noah's bed. Mr. Carter, she began slowly, I don't usually get involved with patients personally, but I can't shake the feeling I've met your son before. My heartbeat kicked up. That's impossible, I said, though my voice didn't sound convincing even to me. Charlotte's eyes didn't leave mine. Maybe, or maybe not. She glanced at Noah again, and for just a moment, I thought I saw moisture in her eyes. The moment Charlotte said she might have met Noah before, something shifted in the room. It wasn't just her words, it was the way she said them, like she was weighing every syllable. I forced a small laugh, trying to break the tension. Well, unless you've been hanging out at small playgrounds on the south side, I doubt you've met him. She didn't laugh. Instead, her gaze lingered on Noah, who had dozed off, his small chest rising and falling under the thin hospital blanket. I grew up not far from here, she said quietly. Different world back then, but sometimes paths cross in ways you don't expect. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. My instinct told me to keep my guard up. People like her didn't drift into the lives of people like me without a reason. Before I could ask anything else, the door opened and the doctor stepped in with a clipboard. Charlotte straightened but didn't leave. Mr. Carter, the doctor began. We ran some basic labs and an ultrasound. It looks like Noah has an inflamed appendix. We'll need to operate tonight before it ruptures. My stomach dropped. Surgery? Is he going to be okay? The doctor nodded reassuringly. It's a routine procedure, but it has to be done soon. That word, routine, meant nothing to a father staring at his only child lying in a hospital bed. My mind immediately went to the cost. Insurance? None. Savings? Gone 2 months ago when my truck's transmission died. I swallowed hard. And the bill? The doctor hesitated, glancing at Charlotte before answering. We'll have the financial department talk to you. Translation, it's going to hurt bad. Charlotte spoke up, her voice steady. Put all charges under the Bennett Foundation Patient Assistance Program. Both the doctor and I looked at her. Ma'am, that's usually for... The doctor started, but she cut him off. I said put it under the program, she repeated, her eyes never leaving mine. Mr. Carter, you don't need to worry about the cost. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her right. Why would you do that? Her answer was so soft I almost missed it. Because sometimes we take care of the people we were meant to find. Before I could press her for more, the doctor excused himself to prepare for the surgery. Charlotte stood, smoothing her blazer. "I'll be here when he wakes up," she said. "Trust me, he's in good hands." And then she was gone, leaving me with 1,000 questions and no answers. I paced the waiting room while Noah was in surgery, my thoughts a storm. It didn't make sense. I'd never met this woman in my life, and yet there was something in her eyes when she looked at Noah. Not pity, not charity. Something deeper. An hour later, a nurse came out to tell me the surgery had gone well. Relief hit me so hard I had to sit down. When they wheeled Noah back into recovery, Charlotte was already there, sitting beside the bed like she'd never left. She looked at me as if she'd made a decision. "Mr. Carter," she said softly, "when your son is discharged, I'd like to talk to you, somewhere private." "About what?" I asked, my voice cautious. Her eyes dropped to Noah, then back to me. "About his mother, and about the truth you were never told." My breath caught. The words truth and mother together sent a cold shiver down my spine. And for the first time in 6 years, I wasn't sure if I wanted the answers. Noah was discharged 2 days later. He was groggy but smiling, the kind of tired smile that comes after pain has finally lifted. I carried him to the car, grateful he was okay. But the weight in my chest hadn't gone away. Charlotte had kept her word. Before I left, she asked me to meet her in a quiet cafe across from the hospital. She'd even offered to send a driver, but I refused. I didn't like the idea of being chauffeured like some project she'd taken on. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting by the window, a cup of coffee in front of her, untouched. The winter light made her look different, softer. I slid into the seat across from her. "All right," I said. "You said you had something to tell me about Noah's mother." Charlotte studied me for a long moment before speaking. "Ethan, I knew Lily." My hands tightened around my coffee cup. "What do you mean you knew her?" "We went to the same high school," she said. "We weren't close friends, but we shared a connection." I shook my head. "That's impossible. Lily never mentioned you." "She wouldn't have," Charlotte said quietly. "Not after what happened." There was something in her tone that made my stomach twist. "What happened?" She looked out the window, her eyes following the snow drifting past. "Back then, I wasn't a good person. I came from money, from a family that believed they owned the world. I was arrogant, I hurt people. And one night at a party I said things to Lily that I regretted for years, cruel things. Things about her family, her dreams, even about the boy she loved, you." The air seemed to leave the room. I didn't want to hear this, but I couldn't stop her. "I moved away after graduation," she continued. "But I never forgot her. Years later, I heard she'd married you. And then, I heard about her passing." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "So what? You feel guilty, and now you're trying to make it right by paying for Noah's surgery?" Charlotte's eyes sharpened. "No. I'm trying to make it right because there's more to the story than you know." Something in her voice made my pulse quicken. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a small, worn photograph. My heart stopped when I saw it. It was Lily, smiling, hair windblown, holding a tiny baby. But it wasn't Noah. "This was taken a year before you met her," Charlotte said. "She had a child before." I stared at the photo, the edges blurring as my mind tried to process her words. "That's not possible. Lily would have told me." Charlotte shook her head. "She gave the baby up. Her parents forced her. She was 17. She never spoke about it, not even to you." The cafe felt too small, too loud, even though no one was talking. My thoughts were spinning. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice low. Charlotte took a breath. "Because that child was mine. My family adopted her. And years later, when I saw Noah, I felt something I can't explain. The way he looks at me, it's the same way she looked at me when she was a baby." I stared at her, not sure if I should believe her, run out of the cafe, or demand proof right there. "Ethan," Charlotte said, her voice trembling for the first time, "I think Noah is my nephew." The words slammed into me like a truck, and in that moment, I realized my son's life, and mine, was about to change forever. I sat there, staring at Charlotte like she'd just told me the sky was green. My coffee had gone cold, untouched. "My nephew?" I repeated, my voice sharper than I meant. "Do you have any idea what you're saying?" Charlotte didn't flinch. "Yes, and I know how it sounds, but I'm not here to take him from you. I need to know. For both of us." I shook my head. "This is insane. Lily never mentioned anything like this. Not once. And I knew her better than anyone." Her eyes softened. "Ethan, love doesn't erase pain. Sometimes it buries it so deep we can pretend it never happened." I hated that her words made sense. I hated even more that I could still hear Noah's voice in my head from the hospital lobby. "That's Mommy." I stood up, grabbing my jacket. "I'm not doing this. My son's just been through surgery. He doesn't need strangers digging up ghosts." Charlotte stood too. "I'm not a stranger to him." "That's exactly what you are," I snapped. My voice was low, but it still made the older man at the counter glance over. Her jaw tightened. "If you won't believe me, then let's get proof. A DNA test. I'll cover everything." I almost laughed. "You think I'm going to let you swab my kid's cheek because you had a feeling?" Her voice softened again. "Not just a feeling. When I saw him, I knew. The way he tilts his head, the little crease in his chin, even the way he says certain words, it's like looking at my sister again. And I haven't seen her since the day she was taken from Lily." That word, taken, stuck in my head like a splinter. I rubbed a hand over my face. "And if the test says you're wrong?" "Then I walk away," she said without hesitation. "You'll never hear from me again." I wanted to tell her no. I wanted to walk out and never look back. But the truth was, ever since that lobby, something had been gnawing at me. Noah didn't call women mommy. He didn't even call other moms by their names unless he knew them well. And then there was Lily. The little things that didn't add up, like the way she'd tear up when adoption stories came on TV, or how she'd always avoid questions about her teenage years. I sighed, my shoulders heavy. "Fine, one test, but you don't come near him without me there. And you don't tell him anything until we know for sure." Charlotte nodded. "Agreed." 2 days later, we met at a private clinic. It was sterile and quiet. Nothing like the chaotic ER Noah had been in. He sat on my lap, swinging his legs, holding the lollipop the nurse had bribed him with. "It's just a quick swab in your mouth, buddy," I told him, trying to sound casual. Charlotte sat across the room, hands folded, her expression unreadable. She didn't say a word, just watched as the nurse took the sample. Then, almost reluctantly, she let the nurse swab her own cheek. When it was over, Noah hopped down, more interested in the vending machine than whatever just happened. Outside, Charlotte stopped me before I reached the car. "The results will take a few days," she said. "Ethan, whatever they say, I meant what I told you. I'm not here to take him from you." I stared at her. "You're already taking something from me." "What?" she asked. "My certainty," I said. "For 6 years I knew exactly what my life was. Now I'm not so sure." Her eyes softened again, but I turned away before she could answer. For the next few days, every time Noah laughed, every time he said something in that stubborn way of his, I caught myself wondering, was that Lily in him? Or someone else? And when the clinic finally called, my hands shook as I answered. When the clinic called, I almost didn't answer. For 3 days, my stomach had been in knots, my mind split between wanting the truth and wishing I'd never agreed to it. "Mr. Carter," the voice on the line said, "your results are in. We can email them, or you can come in to review them." I didn't want an email. I needed to hear it, in person, where there'd be no room for my imagination to twist the words. I called Charlotte. She agreed to meet me at the clinic within the hour. The room was small, just a table and 2 chairs. The nurse handed me the folder, but my hands didn't move to open it. I looked at Charlotte. She was sitting straight, her hands clasped in front of her, but I could see the tension in her jaw. Do you want to? I asked, sliding the folder toward her. No, she said softly. You're his father. You should read it. So I did. The words blurred at first, but then my eyes locked onto the line that mattered. Probability of relation. 99.97%. Charlotte Bennett is the biological aunt of Noah Carter. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. It was real. Every impossible thing she'd said was true. When I looked up, Charlotte's eyes were glistening. So, she really was my sister, she whispered. I closed the folder. Looks that way. For a moment, we just sat there in silence. I could feel the weight of everything that had been lost. Years of connection, of answers Lily had taken with her. Finally, I said, I don't know what this means for us. For Noah. Charlotte nodded. It doesn't have to mean anything you don't want it to. I told you before, I'm not here to take him from you. But I would like to be in his life, as much or as little as you'll allow. I studied her. Why? You've got an empire to run. Why take on a kid who doesn't even know you? Her voice cracked, just slightly. Because I spent half my life building things that didn't matter, and now I've been handed the one thing that does. Family. That night, after I put Noah to bed, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the folded test results on the table. I thought about Lily, how much she'd loved him, how hard it must have been to keep something like this buried. I didn't know if I'd ever forgive her for not telling me. But I also knew she'd had her reasons. The next weekend, I called Charlotte. If you're serious about being in his life, I said, then let's start slow. No big titles, no heavy talks. Just someone he can trust. She agreed without hesitation. The first time she came over, she brought a stack of children's books and a homemade lasagna that put mine to shame. Noah was shy at first, hiding half behind my leg, but by the end of the night he was curled up beside her on the couch, listening as she read aloud. Over the weeks that followed, she became a fixture, not just for Noah, but for me. She'd stop by with groceries, or offer to watch him when I was pulling double shifts. And sometimes, late at night, we'd sit at my kitchen table talking about Lily, sharing the little pieces of her we each still held. One snowy evening in February, I caught Noah looking between the two of us with a curious expression. "What is it, buddy?" I asked. He grinned, missing one front tooth. "I think I have two parents now." I opened my mouth to correct him, but Charlotte's hand brushed mine under the table, and for once, I didn't. Maybe he was right. Not in the way he thought, but in the way that mattered. Because in the end, family isn't always the one you expect. Sometimes, it's the one that finds you in a hospital lobby when you're at your lowest and changes everything. And as I watched them laugh together, I realized that for the first time in years, our little family felt whole.